Welcome to your deep dive into the world of smartwatches and health monitoring. Looks like you've sent us a really interesting mix of articles and research on this. Clearly, you're curious about how these devices can track more than just our steps.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We've seen smartwatches evolve from simple step counters to devices that can potentially provide insights into some serious medical conditions. This field is moving incredibly fast. Today, we'll explore what's scientifically proven, what's still emerging, and what you should consider when looking at the data from your own smartwatch.
It feels like every day there's a new study about smartwatches detecting everything from sleep apnea to blood sugar levels. So where do we even begin with all this?
Well, to understand the potential, it helps to understand how they actually work. It all starts with the sensors. You've probably heard of accelerometers, those measure changes in motion and help track things like steps and activity levels.
Right, that makes sense. But I'm more curious about the other sensors, like the ones used for heart rate. What can you tell us about those lights?
Smartwatches typically use a technology called photoplethysmography, or PPG, to measure heart rate. Essentially, it shines a light through your skin and measures how much light bounces back. Since blood absorbs light, the amount of light reflected back to the sensor changes as your heart beats and blood flows through your wrist.
So it's not actually measuring the electrical activity of the heart like an EKG does.
Exactly. It's using those changes in light reflection as a proxy for your heartbeat. And this is where things get interesting, because the accuracy of that measurement can be affected by a few things.
Things like movement, right?
Mm.
I've noticed that my heart rate readings sometimes go haywire when I'm working out.
Movement is a big one. Other factors like skin tone and even tattoos can also impact how the light is absorbed and reflected, which can influence the accuracy of the readings.
So how should we be thinking about the accuracy of all this data? Should we take it with a grain of salt?
It's always a good idea to be mindful of the limitations. But that doesn't mean the data is useless. One area where smartwatches are showing real promise is in monitoring heart health, specifically for detecting atrial fibrillation, or AFib.
I've seen headlines about that. What exactly is AFib, and how can a smartwatch detect it?
AFib is a type of irregular heartbeat that can increase the risk of stroke. Smartwatches can detect it by analyzing those PPG heart rate readings we were just talking about. The algorithms can pick up on the irregular patterns in your heartbeat that are characteristic of AFib.
So these algorithms are pretty sophisticated then.
They are, and they're getting more advanced all the time. What's interesting is that these algorithms often use machine learning, meaning they learn and improve over time as they are exposed to more data.
That's impressive.
Okay.
But how reliable is this AFib detection? Can we really trust a smartwatch to catch something as serious as a heart condition?
There have been some large-scale studies, like the Apple Heart study, which involved over 400,000 participants, that have shown these smartwatches can be quite accurate in detecting AFib, particularly in younger populations.
So while it's not a replacement for seeing a doctor, it could potentially serve as an early warning system.
Exactly. If your smartwatch detects an irregular rhythm, it can prompt you to talk to your doctor and get a proper diagnosis. And early detection is key when it comes to managing AFib and reducing the risk of complications.
That makes a lot of sense. It seems like smartwatches are moving beyond just fitness trackers and into the realm of legitimate health monitoring tools. Are there other health conditions that they might be able to detect in the future?
There's a lot of exciting research happening right now. For instance, Dr. Jesslyn Dunn at Duke University has been doing some fascinating work looking at how wearable data can be used to monitor a wide range of health factors.
Okay, I'm all ears. What has her research shown?
One of her studies found that certain patterns in heart rate variability, sleep duration, and activity levels collected from wearables actually correlated with clinical blood test results.
Wait, are you saying they could potentially do blood tests without actually drawing blood?
It's still early days. But that's the hope. It's not about replacing traditional blood tests entirely, but rather exploring how wearables could offer a non-invasive way to monitor various health markers.
That would be incredible. Imagine being able to track things like cholesterol or blood sugar levels just by wearing a watch.
It sounds like science fiction, but it's getting closer to reality. But remember, we still need more research to validate these findings and ensure the accuracy of these methods before they can be used in a clinical setting.
Right, we can't get ahead of ourselves. So it seems like heart health is a sweet spot for smartwatches right now, with promising research in other areas. But we've also talked about those accuracy issues with the sensors.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that these devices are currently classified as wellness devices, not medical devices. They aren't subject to the same rigorous FDA regulations as, say, a heart monitor in a hospital.
So how should we, as users, be interpreting this data? Where do we draw the line between useful information and potentially misleading data points?
That's a great question. It really gets to the heart of how we use this technology effectively. Think of your smartwatch as a tool for gathering information, a starting point for a conversation with yourself and your doctor, rather than a definitive diagnosis.
So it's more about spotting those long-term trends and patterns, rather than getting hung up on every single data point.
Precisely. Let's say you've been working on improving your sleep habits. Instead of focusing on the occasional night of tossing and turning, look at your sleep duration and quality over several weeks or even months. Are you seeing an overall improvement? That's the kind of insight that can be really motivating.
And if you notice a negative trend, like consistently poor sleep quality or an unexplained increase in resting heart rate, that could be a signal to check in with your doctor.
Exactly. It's about using the data to empower yourself and take proactive steps toward better health. But it's important to strike a balance. You don't want to become so obsessed with the numbers that you lose sight of how you're actually feeling.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Data overload can be a real issue with these devices. How can we avoid getting overwhelmed by all the information?
One strategy is to personalize which metrics you're tracking. Think about your specific health goals. If you're primarily focused on improving your fitness, you might prioritize steps, active minutes, and heart rate during workouts. If stress management is your main concern, maybe focus on heart rate variability and sleep data.
That makes a lot of sense. Choose the data that's most relevant to you. And don't feel like you need to track every single thing.
Right. And don't forget that technology is only part of the equation. Your smartwatch can provide valuable insights, but it's your actions and choices that ultimately drive real change.
We were talking earlier about Dr. Patel and his work with the Nudge Unit at Penn Medicine. It seems like there's a real opportunity to combine these wearable devices with behavioral science to help people make those positive changes.
Absolutely. Having all this data is great, but it's what you do with it that matters. That's where those nudges come in, those little prompts or reminders that encourage you to make healthier choices.
Can you give us some examples of how these nudges might work in the real world?
Imagine you set a goal to walk 10,000 steps a day. Your smartwatch could send you a friendly notification in the afternoon if you're falling short of your target, reminding you to take a walk or suggesting you park further away from your destination.
Oh, I like that. Subtle but effective. What about those gamification ideas we were talking about? How could that be incorporated?
We know that a lot of people are motivated by competition. So imagine a program where you can earn points or badges for hitting your goals, maybe even compete with friends or family members.
That taps into our natural desire for social connection and support. It's like having a virtual cheering squad.
Exactly. And it's not just about competition. Support and collaboration can be just as powerful. Imagine joining a virtual walking group where you can encourage each other, share tips, and celebrate milestones together.
That would definitely make staying motivated a lot easier. It's interesting how this technology can facilitate those social connections and create a sense of community around health and well-being. But of course, with all this talk about data sharing, we have to address the elephant in the room, privacy.
You're right, it's a valid concern. The more personal data these devices collect, the more important it becomes to be mindful of how that data is being used and protected.
So what steps are being taken to ensure the privacy and security of our health data?
Both researchers and companies are taking this issue very seriously. For starters, when researchers are studying this type of data, they use de-identification techniques, which essentially means they remove any personally identifiable information from the data sets. So your name, address, and other sensitive information are stripped away, leaving only the health data itself.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. What about the companies that make these devices? What are they doing to protect our privacy?
Well, for one, many of them are now providing detailed privacy policies that outline how they collect, use, and share your data. I know it can feel tedious reading through those, but they are worth checking out if you're concerned about your privacy.
So we need to be informed consumers and make conscious choices about which devices and apps we use and how we share our data.
Absolutely. And remember, you can always adjust the privacy settings on your device to control what data is being collected and shared.
That's good to know. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the science behind these devices, the exciting possibilities for health monitoring, and the importance of data privacy. But I want to shift gears a bit and talk about your personal experience with wearables. Do you use a smartwatch or any other type of wearable device?
I do. I wear a smartwatch mainly for tracking my activity levels and sleep patterns. I'm fascinated by the insights it provides, and I find it motivating to see those trends over time. But I try to be mindful of not getting too obsessed with the numbers. It's a tool, not a dictator.
I like that. A tool, not a dictator. What about you? Have you hopped on the smartwatch bandwagon?
I haven't yet, but I'm definitely intrigued by all the possibilities, especially in the realm of health monitoring. But I also share those concerns about data privacy and the potential for information overload. I think finding the right balance is key.
I agree. It's about using this technology in a way that enhances our lives without taking over. But with all the amazing things these devices can already do, it makes me wonder, what's next? What's the next frontier for smartwatches and health?
Well, some researchers are already exploring how wearables could be used to detect infections like COVID-19.
Hold on, are you saying our smartwatches could become like tiny disease detectors?
That's the idea. There's a fascinating project called COVID-denify at Duke University, led by the Dr. Dunn we mentioned earlier. They're using data from wearables, things like heart rate variability, sleep patterns, and activity levels, to try to identify patterns that might indicate a COVID-19 infection.
Wow, that's incredible. And potentially life-saving. How does that even work?
It turns out that even before you start feeling sick, your body often shows subtle physiological changes when you're fighting off an infection. These changes can manifest in things like your heart rate, sleep quality, and even how much you move around.
So the algorithms can pick up on these subtle shifts in our data and potentially alert us before we even know we're sick.
That's the hope. It's still early research, but the preliminary results are promising. And what's really cool is that they're encouraging people to contribute their data to help improve the accuracy of the algorithms.
So we can actually be part of this cutting-edge research. Where can people go to learn more about this study and potentially contribute their data?
We'll be sure to include a link to the COVID-denify project in the show notes for this episode.
That's fantastic. It's so inspiring to see how technology can be used not only to monitor our health, but also to potentially predict and prevent illness. But as these devices become more sophisticated and collect more sensitive data, that conversation about privacy becomes even more crucial.
Absolutely. It's a conversation that needs to continue as this technology evolves. We need to be thoughtful about how we use this data, who has access to it, and what safeguards are in place to protect our privacy.
It's a lot to consider. But the potential benefits are so compelling. It seems like there's no limit to what these little wrist computers can do.
It really is remarkable how far the technology has come in such a short time, and who knows what the future holds. We might be wearing smartwatches that can analyze our DNA, monitor our brainwaves, or even predict our future health risks.
That's getting into some serious sci-fi territory.
Whoa! It might seem like science fiction, but the line between what's possible and what's imaginable is constantly being blurred. Just look at how smartphones have transformed our lives in the past decade. It's not a stretch to think that wearables could have a similar impact on our health and well-being in the coming years.
It's definitely an exciting time to be alive and to be witnessing this technological revolution. But with all this advancement, I think it's crucial to remember that we, as humans, need to stay in the driver's seat.
I completely agree. These devices can provide us with incredible data and insights. But it's up to us to interpret that information, make informed decisions, and take action to improve our health.
We can't simply outsource our health to technology.
Yeah.
We need to be active participants in our own well-being.
Well said. These devices can be powerful allies in our health journey, but they can't replace the importance of lifestyle choices, medical care, and human connection.
Speaking of human connection, we've been talking a lot about you and your research. I'm curious to hear more about what initially drew you to this field of study. What sparked your interest in smartwatches and their potential for health monitoring?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think for me, it was personal. I've always been fascinated by the intersection of technology and health. And when I first started seeing these smartwatches emerge, I was immediately intrigued by the potential they had to empower people to take control of their own well-being.
Yeah, I get that. There's something really empowering about having all that data at your fingertips. But it can also be a bit overwhelming. Like, where do you even start?
Right, exactly. That's why I think it's so important to focus on the insights rather than getting lost in the numbers themselves. What patterns are you seeing in your data? What's working for you? What could you be doing differently?
It's about asking those questions and then using the data to guide your actions.
Exactly.
And it's important to remember that everyone's journey is different.
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to health. What works for one person might not work for another.
So it's really about finding what works for you,
And-
experimenting and listening to your body.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to seek guidance from healthcare professionals along the way.
They can help you make sense of the data and develop a plan that's tailored to your individual needs.
Precisely.
So it's a collaboration between you, your smartwatch, and your healthcare team.
I like that. A health trifecta.
I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. This deep dive has been fascinating. We've learned so much about the science, the potential, and even the challenges of smartwatches and health monitoring.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you.
And to you, the listener, we hope you found this exploration as thought-provoking as we have.
And remember, the future of health is in your hands.
Literally.
Literally.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, stay curious and stay healthy.